Hello again, welcome back to my workshop. So I've had a lot of requests from people and questions on how they do up an old steel or fix an old type carbon steel they might have picked up at the second-hand shop, or an old one that was their grandfather's or father's, or picked it up from somewhere. How do they go about doing it up and restoring it and putting it back into use? So I've decided we'll do a video on it. So we'll work out selecting an old steel, what's worth putting the time into getting it going again, why you would even want to do that, and we'll take a steel right through from how we found it, picked it up, right through to fully restored and in working condition, and put it into service and see how it compares to the modern steels. Okay, so we need to have a look at what type of old steel's worthwhile doing up. So there's many old English Sheffields, German, Eftik, Soligen, made in Soligen. So which ones, how do we tell if it's going to be any good? So what we need, firstly, we need the steel to be hard. So all these old steels that you'll pick up could be well over 100 years old, or it could be, not that old. So how do we tell if it's going to be any good? Well, we need it firstly to be hard. Even from the same companies, they could have been made over 50, 60 or 100 years. Just because you've got a brand on there, we don't know whether in that period when it was made, how good the heat treatment was at the time. So what we need to do, it's got to be hard. So the steel needs to be harder than the knife that we're sharpening on. So the best way to do that is with an old chainsaw file, actually a new chainsaw file. So when we run the file on the steel, the file, it may scratch it, and may take off a bit of that old patina or rust, but we don't want the file shouldn't be able to grind a groove into the steel. So we can see that this steel here, it's an old Sheffield, old Southern and Richardson. We can see it's not really biting into the steel. It's shining it up, but it isn't. You can hear it just skating over the top. So that steel there would be a good candidate. What can happen as you're working on it, it could be what's known as case hardened. So the outside may be nice and hard, your file will skate over it, but as you're working on it, grinding it back, then you've gone through that hard coating and suddenly you've hit soft steel underneath. And that's exactly what happened with this steel here. I was given to by a guy who wanted it done up, fixed up, and it was nice and hard, but as I was grinding all the pitting out of it, suddenly I could see it wasn't sparking as much, and when I put a file on it, so you can hear the difference on that one, it's not singing, you can hear the file just cutting into it. So that one, that's soft, it's no good, not worth the time. It goes into the bin. A candidate I picked up the other day, I thought would be good for this project. Picked it up in an old second-hand shop. I spotted it there. It's an old Eftik, and it's got the arrow pointing back to the handle, meaning it was made before the war. So it's got a bit of pedigree. These are pretty well sought after, but she's had a pretty hard time. This one, it's had a lot of use. Looks like somebody's done it up or attempted to do it up in the past. The handle's it's been cut for some reason, plugged up. It's all loose. A lot of pitting in it, so we need to get all that out. And there's quite a deep pit right here in the middle, which is, it's going to be tough, but I think we can get that out. So what we're aiming to do is remove all the pitting, so all the rust right back. So we don't want any holes left in there. We want to get them right back to bare metal. So then when we put the lines and smooth it out, we haven't got anywhere for the moisture to get trapped in. One thing with a lot of the German steels, which makes it a bit easier to do up, a lot of them are threaded right through, and the top hanger is actually threaded on there. So that makes it a lot easier when we come to doing the handle part of it. We've got something, so we'll get that off, and we can put our new handle on there. We'd be able to reuse this hanger and front ferrule if we wanted to, but this one's quite rough. I think we'll make a new one, and same with the front ferrule. We'll see as we go whether it's worth polishing up, whether we can save it, or we'll just replicate it in a piece of brass and make a new one. A lot of the English steels made in Sheffield, a lot of them you encounter will be like this. So what they've done here, they've welded a thin piece of like wire on the end of the shaft. It comes through the handle, and that's bent over, and then you have your hanger on it. Worked perfectly fine because these are still found and they've been used for 100 odd years, so that's fine. But if you want to replace the handle and put a food safe one on it, so you can use it in the meatworks, we'll need to put a plastic handle on that. So that'll have to come off, and to get these off you need to actually cut that off, put in a vise, keep twisting it, and then it'll slowly come loose and you'll be able to pull it off. And with these ones then there's a bit more work. You're going to have to decide how you're going to attach the handle to it, and usually we would weld a threaded rod in there, and then we can screw a hanger onto it. So we'll talk about for a minute why you would even want to worry about mucking around with an old steel, rather than, and why people do that rather than just buying one off the shelf. Well, when steels are traditionally always just a hardened piece of carbon steel, and when I say carbon steel, so it's high carbon steel, but it rusts. It will go rusty, as you can see with these old ones if you don't look after it. Steels, suddenly they started coating them with a chrome coating and different types of coating, and they'll rust proof, but a lot of professionals found that these old steels used to work better, so they wanted to keep using these, and so they would get these and do them up, and found they were far superior to a lot of the modern steels coming through. And that was sort of, unless you went and got an old file, you could do up old files, the same thing. So any hardened piece of steel, so traditionally a lot of old butchers and old meat workers would go and get these, find these in second-hand shops or wherever, and do them up, and they would sort of be your main boner slicer on the chain. He'd have the sharpest knives in the shed, so everyone started wanting to do that. And but then recently, the past 10, 15 years, maybe 20 years, there's been a lot more custom steels being made, in which I'm one of those guys, making them out of tool steel. The advantage of tool steel over carbon steel, we can control the hardness. We know it's hardened all the way through. Most of them are made out of D2, tool steel, and it is more rust resistant to the carbon steel, but it will rust. It will still rust if you don't look after it. But still, people still get these old steels going, and they'll end up get them going right. They'll work just as good, but you've got to put a bit more time into that than this one. But you still need to look after this one. This one won't rust as readily as the carbon ones, but it still will rust. And now, moving on from that type of tool steel, well, we have a new tool steel new out. The time of this video, I have it. This steel. This is a trial one, just come into the country, and it is much more rust resistant again. So this is more of a stainless steel, and previously we couldn't get a stainless steel that we could get the hardness that we needed. That's going to be harder than the knife, and it would work and be readily available. So we've imported this steel, super hard, super rust resistant compared to the others. So this is probably the future where we're going, but there's still people that want to get these old steels and do them up. So that's what we're going to do today, and over a series we'll work through this steel and get him going again. And then for those out there that don't want to fork out the money on one of these new custom steels and of various other makers, still want to do up an old steel, well, this is going to be how you go about it. Okay guys, we'll pull it up there. Try not to let it get too boring in one hit, so we'll break it up into parts. So next time we'll pull the steel apart, we'll have a look at what we've got to do, how we're going to achieve it. We'll have a bit of a look at the grinders, and we'll get into doing a bit of grinding. Okay, see you next time.